My plan was to take a Greyhound bus the rest of the way to San Diego, so I wanted to find the local bus station as early as I could so as not to miss the bus in case it came through early in the day. I found the bus depot, which turned out to be a convenience store where the bus stopped in Albany. I went in the store and purchased a ticket to San Diego. When I got to talking to the guy who had sold me the bus ticket, he let me know Greyhound did not let people transport their bicycles, but that he would remedy that problem for me. My bike had detachable wheels, which made dismantling my bike quicker, and I removed the seat and handlebars as well. It helps when you remember to bring a good set of tools on the road. We then proceeded to stuff my bike into a cardboard box using my saddlebags as cushioning. That was done early, and I had a couple of hours until I had to catch the bus, so I just hung out, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, and chatting with the guy when he wasn't busy taking care of other customers or his duties at the store. When the bus came, I put my box containing my bike and saddlebags into the undercarriage of the bus while I brought my backpack onto the bus with me. The ride on the bus from Albany, Oregon to San Diego took about a day and a half. I have never been able to sleep well while traveling down the road, so I was really tired when we finally got to the bus depot in San Diego. As I was attempting to reassemble my bike after everyone exited the bus, I was hitting a snag in the process as I was having trouble getting the handlebars reattached properly. The guy whom I had been sitting next to on the bus for pretty much the entire way down there helped me out, and I was good to go. I went over to a payphone in the bus depot and looked in the phone directory to find a motel, hotel, or hostel nearby, only to discover there was a motel in the upper floors of the building that housed the bus depot. I paid for a room for the night, took a quick nap, and called the local 12-step hotline to find out where the meetings were in the area. I was told of a meeting taking place in about an hour, only a block down the street from where I was. I went to that meeting, introduced myself as a visitor in town for the convention. During the smoke break outside, a woman approached me and said that she and her husband were the chairs of the hospitality committee for the convention. She said that I could stay at their recovery house since they happened to have a few empty beds at the time, which was very beneficial since they didn't charge me anything, and I ended up in San Diego about 2 weeks before the convention. Riding the bus shaved a lot of time off my trip south. The couple that let me stay at the recovery house managed the place and were in recovery themselves. They were really nice people and gave me an open invitation to come over to their apartment, which was on the same property, to have coffee and chit-chat anytime I wanted. I only did that once or twice the entire time I stayed there, as I was on vacation and in a new place, thus out for exploration. I had been to San Diego to visit my mom for the summer when I was about 7 years old. Yeah, I think I was 7. But I don't remember all the details of that trip. Since I had nearly 2 weeks until the convention, I got hooked up with other young people in the program that lived in the area and began attending local meetings with them while touring San Diego area at the same time. It was a blast. The speaker meeting I went to on Sunday nights while I was down there took place in a gigantic room where the average attendance at each meeting was 400 to 500 people. While so many people were in town for the convention, attendance had jumped up to around 800. It was standing room only, and not a good place to be if one is claustrophobic, which I am gratefully not. A couple of my new friends and I went to a hotel downtown one day as we were invited to a gathering of young people in recovery. The guy that had given us the invite was an artist who had printed up some t-shirts with a logo he had designed for the young people's group where he lived in Hawaii. I forget whether it was raffle or done randomly, but he gave away 10 of those t-shirts, and I got one. I was having the time of my life, but it was to get even better. A few days later, my new friends and I all piled into one of their cars and went to Jack Murphy Stadium for the convention. I had been to some really big meetings before where a bunch of people were gathered for the purpose of recovery. But this was amazing. There was a plethora of people in that stadium. After I got home in Washington, I found out there had been 75,000 people in this stadium that day. I was used to the biggest 12-step meetings back home having an average attendance of 30 to 50 people, just to give you some perspective. I did not have to ride my bike or the bus back home, as it happened that one of my good friends who had driven down to the convention from Washington said I could ride home with him. He had some family to visit in the week following the convention, and I was able to stay on at the recovery house. While waiting for my ride home, that week was spent doing more cruising around town on my bike. I was surprised I did not see many other cyclists on the road in San Diego, but maybe they were just not in the downtown area as I was, since the roads seemed to be busier in metro areas. I do not really mind if roads are busier. It just means one should be more cautious. But then again, as a side note, it seems as though I have heard many stories of bicycle accidents in like downtown Seattle and downtown Tacoma and so forth. I don't know, be it cyclist's fault or driver's fault, whatever. But it happens, so just be cautious. When my friend came to pick me up, he brought something to my attention which I had failed to consider and ask him about, which was my bike. He did not have room enough in his car to bring my bike back to Washington. I opted to go ahead and get a ride home with him rather than find another way to go, which included my bike. It sort of sucked, but what was I to do? After all, I had to get back home so I could get back to work. So we started our trip northward. We made a stop in Beverly Hills, going to a 12-step meeting there. It was just like a meeting back home. There was the same spirit of love and camaraderie at that meeting as I had felt at meetings in Washington. The only difference was that this one happened to be located in Beverly Hills, California. After the meeting, we carried on going north, making a few little pit stops along the way. Oh yeah, I'm going to back up for a moment. I neglected to write it in here. Maybe I totally spaced at the moment, but during the middle of that meeting, I went outside by myself for a cigarette and walked, I think it was a block or two up the road. It was Rodeo Drive, so I walked up to Rodeo Drive just to, walk a block or two on there, just say, hey, I've walked on Rodeo Drive. But I've been there, done that. Okay, but anyway, back to my story. After the meeting, we carried on going north, making a few little pit stops along the way to fuel up the car, get something to eat, or for me to take a smoke break, as this friend does not smoke. When we got back to Enumclaw and my friend dropped me off at my house, I was sort of annoyed that I was not able to bring my bike back home with me, but for the most part, I was grateful that I did not have to ride it all the way home. Oh well, now I was back home and getting back to work, so I would just save up and get another one. That was the plan anyway. I had been back from California for about 3 months when my boss, still unable to stave off relapses into active drug addiction, terminated my job and place to live. He said that he came to the realization that it would be much easier to close his business, which he said was a major trigger for his relapses, and work on his marriage if I was not living with them anymore. For the previous couple of weeks or so, I had been taken by depression and fatigue, although they remained undiagnosed at the time. I had been pushing myself to do my job, let alone get out of bed. When my boss asked me to leave, I called my stepmom to see if she could help me out. She said that her and my brother, who was 10 years old at the time, were renting a room from one of her friends only a few miles from where I was. She told me that I could come crash on their floor if need be. I was without another idea at the moment, so crashing on a floor sounded like a plan. I packed up a backpack with necessities and a couple of changes of clothes and hit the road, hitchhiking to Bonnie Lake, where the floor that I was soon to be sleeping on was located. As per usual, whenever I tried hitching a ride 10 or 20 miles down the road, I ended up walking the majority of the way. When I was running away from home in my teens, it seemed like no problem to hitch a ride that would get me hundreds of miles down the freeway. Yet try to get a ride 2 towns away and end up getting a lot of exercise instead. Go figure. I had been staying with my stepmom and little brother for about a week when I landed a job at Dairy Queen, which happened to be only a few blocks away. If I liked having a roof over my head, it was the wrong job to have since I worked mostly nights. My stepmom's friend, whose house she was renting the room from, was awoken every night when I got back to the house. My stepmom informed me that her friend had told her that I could not stay there anymore, so I grabbed my backpack and hit the pavement. I began couch surfing at various friends' houses in that area, since I did not want to lose my job, which was the only thing I really had going for me at the time. I ended up losing that job after about a month, overeating burgers that had sat on the warmer too long and were to be thrown out anyway. If another day or so passed, I would have been fired for not acquiring my health card anyway. I did have a car that was given to me by a friend of mine, but I did not have a license or the financial ability to pay for the upkeep of the car, such as insurance or gas or whatever. I don't know. I did have a job, so I guess I might have been able to, but yeah. Anyway, the car was a 1980 Toyota Corolla with baseball-sized dents over the entire body, as if it had either been pelted by a pitching machine or rolled down the side of Mount Rainier. Because of its appearance and the fact that the CO was broken off of the emblem on the rear of the car, I refer to the car as my Toyota Rolla. It was a project car my friend had picked up, but he had never started working on it, and he wanted it out of his yard. It had been sitting at the house my stepmom lived at, but since the guy gave me the boot, I had a friend help me get it moved up to my uncle's backyard a few towns away.